Good morning everyone. Today we will see the pharmacotherapy of hypertension. So today this is a revision lecture. So just an overlook on the topic, that is hypertension. So what is blood pressure? This is a lateral pressure which is exerted by the blood on the vessel walls, and this depends upon the different factors, that is the tone of arteries, that is arteriolar tone, and the contractility of heart, intravascular volume, that is the blood volume, elasticity of the vessels. This is also a main factor responsible for the resistance that is offered by the vessels. Then the autonomic output, different hormones, and the neural activity. So how the regulation of blood pressure occurs? Mainly the blood pressure is a product of cardiac output and the peripheral vascular resistance, that is the resistance offered by the peripheral vessels. So whenever we have to manage the high blood pressure, we need to manage these two factors, that is cardiac output and peripheral vascular resistance, either by lowering cardiac output or peripheral resistance or reducing both. These will help in reducing the raised blood pressure. So in both normal and hypertensive individuals, blood pressure is maintained by moment to moment regulation of these two factors. And the diagnosis requires the multiple measurements of the blood pressure at different events, whether at home or office, and then we decide whether the person is having raised blood pressure or not. So except in cases of emergencies like hypertensive emergency or malignant hypertension. Now, depending upon the blood pressure, the Joint National Committee 8 has classified the blood pressure into normal, pre-hypertension, stage 1 and 2 hypertension. So in a normal patient or a person, the blood pressure varies between a range of 120 for systolic blood pressure and less than 80 for the diastolic blood pressure. Whereas when the systolic blood pressure ranges between 120 to 139 and the diastolic between 80 to 89, they have labeled it as pre-hypertension. Whereas when the systolic blood pressure ranges between 140 to 159 millimeters of mercury and the diastolic blood pressure ranges between 90 to 99 millimeters of mercury for diastolic pressure, they have given it as stage 1 of hypertension. And the systolic blood pressure, when it is above 160 and diastolic more than 100 millimeters of mercury, they have labeled it as stage 2 hypertension. So another classification is depending upon the pathological cause, that is primary hypertension where the cause is unknown, and the secondary hypertension where the hypertension is secondary to some other causes like in chronic kidney disease or any other tissue abnormality. And one more factor, that is hypertensive crisis, which is again classified as the hypertensive urgency and hypertensive emergency, where the systolic and diastolic pressures are near about in the same range. Like hypertensive urgency has a systolic blood pressure more than 180 and the diastolic above 110 millimeters of mercury. But the differentiating point between the hypertensive urgency and emergency is that in urgency there is no acute end organ damage, but in hypertensive emergency, along with the raised systolic and diastolic pressure, they have an acute end organ damage. So according to the JNC 8 guidelines, they have given the target blood pressures for systolic and diastolic blood pressure to be maintained according to the age group of the patient. So whenever a patient is more than 60 years, try to maintain the blood pressure below 150 millimeters of mercury for systolic blood pressure and diastolic of less than 90 millimeters of mercury. For those below 60 years of age, maintain the systolic blood pressure below 140 millimeters of mercury and diastolic below 90 millimeters of mercury. But those having chronic kidney disease and diabetes mellitus, either of the disease or with both the diseases, try to maintain the systolic blood pressure below 140 millimeters of mercury and the diastolic below 90 millimeters of mercury as per the JNC 8 guidelines. So how to manage hypertension? There are two possibilities how you can manage, that is a non-pharmacological management and a pharmacological management. So in non-pharmacological management, we have certain factors which need to be taken into account, like reduce the sodium intake. Secondly, lower the intake of fatty foods or fatty products. Maintain a normal body weight. Try to quit smoking. Decrease the consumption of alcohol, and the last two are the important one, that is try to increase the physical activity and exercise. So these are the non-pharmacological factors for managing the hypertension. Now we will move towards the pharmacological factors for managing the hypertension. There are different factors responsible for raising the blood pressure, and there are different drugs which act at these sites for lowering the blood pressure. So those acting on the vasomotor center are the methyl dopa, clonidine and others. Some are acting on the sympathetic ganglia or the vascular smooth muscles like trimethophan. Those acting on the vascular smooth muscles are the hydralazine, minoxidil, nitroprusside and the calcium channel blockers. The drugs like thiazide or other high ceiling diuretics are the ones which act on the different sites on the kidney tubules. The beta blockers are the ones which act on the beta receptors located on the heart and in the juxtaglomerular cells, which are responsible for releasing the renin. So we have propranolol and other beta blockers. There are angiotensin receptor blockers and the alpha receptor blockers like prazosin. ACE inhibitors are the ones which prevent the conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 like captopril, enalapril, and there are direct renin inhibitors which prevent the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, for example aliskiren. Now moving towards the individual class of drugs, firstly we will see the diuretics. So in diuretics we have different class of diuretics like thiazides and related agents, loop diuretics that are the high ceiling diuretics like furosemide and other drugs, and third class is the potassium sparing diuretics. These are the drugs which act at the different sites of the glomerulus and make a role for reducing the blood pressure. The other sympatholytic drugs are the ones like beta receptor antagonist, alpha receptor antagonist, mixed alpha and beta antagonist, and centrally acting sympatholytics. The other classes, that is the calcium channel blockers and ACE inhibitors. These are the two classes which you will study separately in the coming lectures. The next is the angiotensin 2 receptor antagonist, direct renin inhibitors and the vasodilators. Amongst them there are some arteriolar dilators and others are the arterial plus venous dilators. So diuretics, the thiazides like chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, chlorthalidone and metolazone. are the diuretic group of diuretics, whereas furosemide, butanide, ethacrenic acid are the loop diuretics or the high ceiling diuretics. Amongst the next class, that is the potassium sparing diuretics, we have the spironolactone and eplerenone. So in this diagram you will see the sites, different sites on the glomerulus where the different classes of diuretics act. So we have a glomerulus, nephron, which has a proximal tubule, then descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So whatever glomerular filtrate comes to the proximal tubule, it has different ions, and the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors are the drugs which act on this side and inhibit the reabsorption of bicarbonate ions in the PCT, but have a weak diuretic property. Now another class is the loop diuretics like furosemide, butanide, ethacrenic acid. So in the ascending loop of Henle there is a sodium potassium dichloride co-transporter, and which is responsible for retention of sodium and chloride into the tubules. Because of these diuretics, these ions are retained into the tubule and their absorption is reduced, thus helping to reduce the raising of the blood pressure. These are the most efficacious classes of diuretics. So now the filtrate which then passes to the distal convoluted tubule is again acted by the another class of drug, that is the one which act by reducing the reabsorption of sodium and chloride, preventing the retention of water in the tubule. So most commonly used diuretic treatment of the hypertension. The other class is the potassium sparing diuretics, which are the spironolactone, amiloride and triamterene. So these are the drugs which prevent the reabsorption of sodium and secretion of potassium into the tubules. These are the aldosterone antagonist, inhibits the aldosterone mediated reabsorption of sodium and secretion of potassium. The other drugs like amiloride and triamterene block the sodium channels. Thus these drugs prevent the loss of potassium, thus named as the potassium sparing diuretics. So how do thiazides act? They either reduce the peripheral resistance or decrease the sodium and water retention, which is responsible for reduction in blood volume, thus the reduction in cardiac output. So at the end it is responsible for decreasing the blood pressure. So where do we use these diuretics? The high ceiling diuretics like furosemide are used in the cases where the hypertension is complicated by either chronic renal failure or the congestive heart failure, or in the cases those are resistant to thiazides, given in a dose of 20 milligrams orally once a day. Hydrochlorothiazide can be used in mild cases of hypertension and also in combination with other antihypertensives, where given in a dose of 12.5 to 50 milligrams per day. These diuretics share some adverse effects like hypokalemia or hyperglycemia. So because of loss of ions like potassium, the muscle pain and fatigue will be there. Because of potassium depletion, there will be inhibition of insulin release, thus leading to hyperglycemia. It are also responsible for hyperlipidemia and lowering of high density lipoproteins. The other side effects like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea or headache, giddiness are also noted. It is also responsible for the hyperuricemia because of inhibition of excretion of urate. Now the other class which we will see now is the beta blockers. Now these beta blockers are divided into two groups. The ones which are non-selective and the other are the cardioselective. The non-selective ones like propranolol have their action on both the receptors, that is beta 1 and beta 2 receptors, and the cardioselective ones are the ones which have their action on the selective beta receptors. So we have metoprolol, atenolol, acebutolol, esmolol and betaxazole. So these beta blockers are mainly useful in young hypertensives with increased release of renin, also those associated with angina or post myocardial infarction patients and migraine. These patients who receive the vasodilators are prone to have a counteractive reflex tachycardia, and in such cases the beta blockers are the ones which will prevent the tachycardia. So the mechanism of action of beta blockers is, firstly it prevents the or decreases the activation of beta receptors on kidney which are responsible for release of renin. Thus because of decreased activation the renin secretion will be decreased, and this will further lead to decreased angiotensin II production, which is further responsible for reduction in aldosterone mediated sodium and water retention, leading to decreased blood volume and finally reduction in blood pressure. The other way is that it decreases the activation of beta receptors on heart, where it is responsible for decrease in contractility and thus reduction in cardiac output, also responsible for decrease in blood pressure. The several other contraindications for the use of beta blockers are the partial or complete heart block, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases and asthma, because when we use the non-selective beta blockers the exacerbations of asthma may take place, and in cases of peripheral vascular diseases. Now the next class is the alpha adrenergic blockers like prazosin, tirazosin and toxazosin. So these prazosin is a prototype of alpha 1 blocking agent, and the tirazosin and doxazosin are the long acting congeners of these prazosin. Now the alpha blockers reduce the arterial pressure. How? By dilating both the resistance and the capacitance vessels. Other agents which are responsible for blocking the alpha receptors are the phentolamine, which is a non-selective alpha blocker but is a reversible blocker, whereas the phenoxybenzamine, which is a irreversible blocker of alpha receptors and it is also a non-selective blocker. This phenoxybenzamine is useful in diagnosis and treatment of pheochromocytoma, that is the adrenal gland tumor. Prazosin is responsible for causing the postural hypertension. So start by a lower dose, that is a 0.5 milligrams given at bedtime, and slowly you can increase the dose up to 10 milligrams per day. Whenever given as a monotherapy, it has seen to show fluid retention with other side effects like headache, dry mouth, blurred vision, drowsiness and failure of ejaculation in males. The other classes like the ones which have their effect on both the alpha and beta receptors, blocking the alpha and beta receptor mediated raised blood pressure. So in this class we have the carvedilol, labetalol and other drugs. Like carvedilol is the one which has its role in systolic hypertension, where it has shown to improve the outcome in cases of systolic hypertension. They also preserve the left ventricular function and thus reduce the mortality of the patients with hypertension. Then another drug in this class is the labetalol. So this labetalol has its use mainly used in the gestational hypertensive cases and hypertensive emergencies. The other drugs like centrally acting sympatholytics like alpha methyl-dopa and the alpha 2 receptor agonist like clonidine. So what is clonidine? It is a highly lipid soluble drug which crosses the blood-brain barrier and stimulates the alpha 2 receptors in the vasomotor centers. Because of the stimulation of vasomotor center, it causes decreased sympathetic outflow from the vasomotor center, thus leading to decreased heart rate, decreased cardiac output and the reduced peripheral vascular resistance, overall which will lead to reduced blood pressure. The adverse effects seen with clonidine are dryness of mouth, eyes, then sedation, bradycardia and impotence. The sudden withdrawal will lead to withdrawal symptoms. So never withdraw clonidine abruptly. Also the other side effects like depression, salt and water retention, supersensitivity and rebound hypertension can be seen. This is not used frequently nowadays because of the tolerance and withdrawal hypertension noted with this drug, and used only rarely as a third or fourth choice drug with diuretics. What are the uses of clonidine? Used in cases of opioid withdrawal, diabetic neuropathy, pre-anesthetic medication and in prophylaxis of migraine. Alpha methyl-dopa. This is a prodrug which is converted to alpha methyl noradrenaline and which acts on the alpha 2 receptors located in brain, which cause the inhibition of adrenergic discharge in medulla, and because of inhibition of these adrenergic discharge from medulla, there is reduction in total peripheral resistance and thus fall in blood pressure. We have seen that hypertension or blood pressure is a product of cardiac output and total peripheral resistance. So reduction in either of the component, that is cardiac output or the total peripheral resistance, will help in reduction of blood pressure. So what are the adverse effects noted with the methyl-dopa? Are the ones like cognitive impairment, postural hypotension, or the immunological tests like positive Coombs test, lupus-like syndrome, leukopenia or red cell aplasia. Reduced mental acuity is also seen and altered liver function by 5% is noted with alpha methyl-dopa. Now this drug is not used therapeutically except in the hypertension in pregnant females. Next class is the renin inhibitor. So which are the direct renin inhibitors we have? That is the aliskiren, but this is not widely used. It has an antihypertensive effect similar to those of ACE, that is angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. So Diarrhea is noted as a side effect with this drug, and reactive renin secretion after its continued use has limited its effectiveness. So how does this renin act? We have already seen the mechanism where the renin is responsible for increased blood pressure. That is, when angiotensinogen is converted to angiotensin 1, the renin is the one which acts in the conversion of these two, and the further cascade where the angiotensin 1 is converted to 2, and these angiotensin 2 which is responsible for production of aldosterone and further retention of sodium and water are prevented. So the renin inhibitors are the one which act at the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. What are the other classes? That is the vasodilators. So in vasodilators we have seen that there are some arteriolar dilators and some are the arterial plus venodilators. So first we will see hydrelazine, which is a direct arterial dilator. These can be given orally and it can cause a reflex tachycardia, palpitations and sodium water retention. So these drawbacks should be always kept in mind, and accordingly we should combine the other antihypertensive agents with these drugs. It can be countered by giving with diuretics or beta blockers, where these diuretics will cause the excretion of sodium and water retention, and beta blockers will take care of the reflex tachycardia and palpitation caused by the hydrelazine. The other side effects are hypotension, flushing, angina, myocardial infarction or the coronary steal syndrome, and lupus erythematosus. Now minoxidil, this is the potassium channel opener, mostly used by the dermatologist in cases of baldness. So this potassium channel opener causes hyperpolarization of vascular smooth muscles. So because of this it will cause vasodilatation, and this vasodilatation will help in reduction of the blood pressure. These are, as I have already told, used to promote the hair growth. The other class is the diazoxide, which is also a potassium channel opener given as a rapid IV injection for the treatment of hypertensive emergencies. So next drug is the sodium nitroprusside. So what is this sodium nitroprusside? It is a rapidly and consistently acting vasodilator. It causes the relaxation of both resistance and capacitance vessels, and which leads to reduction in total peripheral resistance and the cardiac output, thus helping to reduce the blood pressure. Because of the reduction in the total peripheral resistance, there will be decrease in the venous return, that is the volume coming to heart will be reduced, and thus it will also reduce the cardiac output, that is the volume that is pumped from heart. Unlike hydrelazine, these sodium nitroprusside produces a decrease in cardiac work and no reflex tachycardia is noted. So it also improves the ventricular function in cases of heart failure by reducing the preload, as we have seen that it causes reduction in the total peripheral resistance, and thus because of the vasodilatation the venous return is reduced, causing reduced preload. The mechanism of action is that the RBCs convert the nitroprusside to nitric oxide, which is responsible for relaxation of the smooth muscles of the vessels. So where it is used, it is mostly used in the cases of hypertensive emergencies, where it is used in a dose of 50 milligrams added to 500 ml of saline or glucose, and infused slowly with 0.02 milligrams per minute initially, and later on titrated with the response, that is the reduction in blood pressure noted. The adverse effects seen with nitroprusside, that is sodium nitroprusside, are all due to the release of the cyanides. So these are the palpitations or pain in abdomen, disorientation, psychosis and lactic acidosis. So what is an hypertensive emergency? Here increase in blood pressure, as we have already seen that the blood pressure raises above systolic for more than 180 millimeters of mercury and the diastolic, that is more than 110 millimeters of mercury. So the goal is to reduce the blood pressure by not more than 25% within 1 to 2 hours, as rapid normalization is avoided because chronic hypertension associated with autoregulatory changes also. So hypertensive emergencies, the drugs which we use are the sodium nitroprusside, where given in the dose of 20 to 300 microgram per minute and titrated according to the response. These are reserved for the patients of aortic dissection. The other drugs like clevidipine, which is given as 1 to 2 milligrams per hour IV infusion. Then glyceryl trinitrate, given as 5 to 20 micrograms per minute in cases of cardiac surgery or left ventricular failure or myocardial infarction. Then other is the esmolol, which is useful in reduction of cardiac work and given as a 0.5 milligram of per kg bolus and 50 to 200 microgram per kg per minute dose. The other drug is the phentolamine, where it is used in the cases of pheochromocytoma or the cheese reaction caused by the foods containing the tyramine, which are when consumed in the patients on MAO inhibitors and clonidine withdrawal. So this is given in a dose of 1 to 4 milligrams intravenously. The another drug which we have seen, that is the labetalol, which has its choice to be used in the hypertensive patients, and this is the one which is given in a dose of 2.5 to 25 micrograms per kg per minute infusion. Now the JNC 8 guidelines which were framed have given certain guidelines for the use of the antihypertensive drugs. So these guidelines mention that the beta blockers are now no longer used as the first line drugs because the increased morbidity and mortality noted with these drugs and the daily day-to-day work they affect. So no longer beta blockers are the first line drugs. The thiazide diuretics, ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers and calcium channel blockers are the first line drugs. Rest of the drugs are called the second and third line drugs, as BP should be controlled by the first line drugs in combination. Then we can opt for the second and third line drugs. The others like ACE inhibitors and ARBs should not be given simultaneously in a person. The other rule is that irrespective of the ethnic background, that is black population or white population, irrespective of the ethnic background, the angiotensin receptor blockers and the ACE inhibitors should be used as the first choice drugs in patients of chronic kidney disease. And also the African patients who have not been developed chronic kidney disease should be given thiazides and calcium channel blockers. Thank you.